Hello guys, this is Fight Commentary Breakdowns. I got a very, very special guest. This is John, and it's cool how I got introduced to John because a lot of you know Sakan Lam. Well, John is one of Sakan's teachers. So a very special guest we have here. We all love Sakan, so we can only imagine that John is awesome too, and we're going to go into it. So John has done so much martial arts work all around the world. You know, he's done security work, he's done bodyguard work, now he's in Thailand, and he also has a bunch of courses. So, John, welcome to Fight Commentary Breakdowns.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be with you guys, and I'm fast becoming a fan as well. Just found your stuff through Sakan. I love it.
Dude, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, John, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, you did kind of security work in Minneapolis when Minneapolis was kind of like a city that was still up and coming, right? It wasn't the safest city at the time.
Oh, no. Yeah, so in the early 90s, Minneapolis was actually nicknamed by, I think it was like 60 Minutes or Nightline or something like that. They nicknamed it Murderapolis because it was one of the top 10 violent cities in North America. And I had the privilege of going to university in the downtown city core. And basically, as a college kid, you know, your job choice is like sort of be a security guy or be a waiter. And I didn't want to be a waiter, so I ended up getting a job at a restaurant, a big restaurant in downtown Minneapolis called the Nankin, which was a Chinese restaurant, sat about 1,200 people at the time.
Wow.
And it was also had a nightclub, a bar inside, and it was one of the most violent places in downtown Minneapolis. And I actually got hired by a family that owned it out of Hong Kong. And my interview was actually I got asked to go into the basement of the restaurant and fight one of the brothers.
Wow, dude, that is old school.
Oh, it was intense, man. I didn't know what was going on. And this guy's taking keys off, and he pulls out an aspeton and pepper spray and takes me down in this back kitchen in the basement and says, "Let's fight." So we went for it. And actually, the guy ended up being one of my closest longtime friends. And but we saw a lot of fights together at the Nankin. And then other places in downtown Minneapolis. There was a lot of drug fighting going on as the crack sort of epidemic was sweeping North America. It came from Chicago and moved up through Milwaukee, and then the next logical place is Minneapolis. And so there was a lot of violence, and the police were having a hard time. Actually, Jerry, an interesting little point, the city block that I worked on, one city block, we had 1,600 violent arrests per year on one city block.
Wow.
1,000 violent arrests on one city block in downtown Minneapolis.
Yeah.
It was insane. Wild West.
that is about 4 a day, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, violent arrests. Now, I'm not talking about the ones where we just kind of went pop, pop, pop and kicked them across the street. Those were people who went to jail or the hospital, pretty much.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
Good times.
It's interesting because the person who became your friend, who, you know, tested your ability to defend yourself and your ability to do martial arts, it reminds me, it's like so kind of like in a lot of just like kung fu novels and stuff, the person you fight becomes like one of your best friends, right? It's like that is like, it's almost like art imitating life, because it's like that for you it's like a real thing. And it's funny because like when I was in elementary school, I had an incident like that too. I had this guy who we just didn't get along, and we just went to the soccer field and we fought for 40 minutes, and then we became best friends afterwards.
You couldn't best each other, so you thought we might as well join forces here.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Wow. So dude, tell me about some of the craziest stories during that time when you were doing the security work, some of the craziest lessons you learned too, you know, handling all these crazy people, etc.
You know, the very first night I worked in downtown Minneapolis, and it was as a bouncer, and I came from small town Wisconsin, so not diverse culture, no real violence. I mean, high school fights and stuff like that, but I mean, to have to actually deal with people who were used to a violent lifestyle, you know, we had enforcers come in, and we had actually pimps and drug dealers setting up shop inside the restaurant in the bar area, and they were actually, you know, doing business And so as a couple of, white guys having to deal with a more diverse culture and people who really weren't afraid of violence, the only thing that they feared was pain, really. And so, I remember the first night having to put my hands on a guy who was cracked out, couldn't feel anything. I ended up breaking his wrist. I had him in a gooseneck and was trying to walk him, and he's looking at me. He's cursing at me. He's trying to spit at me. Found out later he was HIV positive. I broke his wrist. My partner broke his other shoulder, and I punched him in the ribs and felt him crumble like eggshells, and understanding real world violence and understanding how this actually works and actually what true evil is. Like, when somebody isn't just mad at you because you stepped in front of them at Pete's Coffee or Starbucks, but someone actually, for whatever reason, wants to really hurt you, like, having to damage somebody is no joke, and it's not a movie. It's real life stuff. And so, never having used my martial arts at that real intense level before, and that night we had 4 or 5, incidences where we had to hurt people. And that was my first day on the job, and it was like, hey, welcome to Minneapolis. Later that night, walking back to my dorm, I got jumped on the street, by 3 guys who wanted my leather coat, of all things, And it was like, what in the world? I came from small town Wisconsin. What have I walked into, Yeah. And so another time, we had all kinds of diverse people that came in there, though, because right across the street was the Target Center, which is where the Timberwolves played, and the professional basketball team. That same event center, they had all the concerts and things. So we had literally, we'd have college people, frat groups coming through, and I got in a situation with 10 guys who were celebrating their buddy turning 21. And, they're spitting on the floor, and one of them got up to urinate on a wall in the restaurant, and I went in to try to stop him and ended up dealing with, 10 of these guys. Same night, I got jumped in the bathroom where some guys wanted to hurt me, and so they called and said there's a guy that is having a medical problem in the bathroom. As I walked in the bathroom, they shoved me into a stall. One of them stood up against the door, and then 2 of them attacked me in the bathroom toilet stall, And so it's like, I got out of it. They got hurt. I didn't. And it turned out to be okay. But later on that night, I got shot at. It was all in the same night. And so it was just constantly running and gunning and keeping a head on a swivel and watching and really becoming observant. And also, I'll tell you, one of the main lessons I learned is I don't bluff. I'm not on unless I'm on. And if I'm on, I'm on. Which means I'm not going to fight ever unless it's a righteous fight. And if it's a righteous fight, that gives me the permission emotionally, legally, morally, ethically to actually do what I do. So if it's my ego, and this is the first thing I teach my students, is if you have time to get angry or feel offended, that's your ego talking to you, and your ego should never be a reason why you fight. So if are in danger or somebody's actually trying to hurt you, you don't have time to get offended. So if you feel offended, it's time to walk away. Now, if I see somebody trying to hurt some older, person or somebody who can't protect themselves, I'm going to be offended and I'm going to go take care of business. But it's never about defending my ego. So when those things would happen, you didn't have time to get offended. You just had to protect yourself and go for it. And then when you go for it, you don't hold back because you're not trying to kill people, but the other side of it is the faster you nullify this violence, the safer it is for everyone.
Wow. Dude, that is such a great 2 lessons. I thank you for, like, explaining it so clearly. It's like, if you feel like, okay, should I be fighting? Even the fact that you have a thought like that probably means you shouldn't be fighting. Because if a real situation comes to you, you don't have the time to decide. You better be reacting already.
That's it. And so that's what I teach people. Do you get offended if you are in a car accident? Are you offended? No, you're terrified and you're trying to make sure you're okay. In a real, true, violent situation, that's not dealing with my ego. And I would say, honestly, at least 95%. It's hard to make a statement like that, but the vast majority of any fights I've ever seen or been involved in have been involving ego, right? can't do that. You're not, you disrespect me. It's not your right. It's my right. All this nonsense. And it's like, if you, here's another really key point. Let's just go back to the old Starbucks thing, right? So I'm a trained martial arts guy with a lot of background and being a professional purveyor of violence, if you will. And so I'm standing in Starbucks. I'm in a grumpy mood, whatever. I had a fight with my wife. Let's say that never happened. She's a saint. But, I'm standing there, and some punk comes in and pushes me out of the way and jumps in line in front of me. Okay? I have a choice in that moment. I have a choice. It's my right, and I've been offended, and certainly he doesn't have the right to treat me that way. But I have a choice, right? Right then. Do I let it go, or do I now pursue my justice, quote unquote? But here's the problem with that. The second I make my choice, I don't have any control whatsoever or ability to choose how he's going to respond to me. And once he's responded, now I have no choice. I am forced to deal with his response. What do I mean by that? I tell this punk, look here, you little crackhead punk, get out of here. You're not stepping in front of me. He gets offended, walks outside and pulls a gun out or a knife or a baseball bat. Now I'm trying to have coffee with my wife to make up for the little spat we just had. But now that's going to get ruined because this guy's going to escalate, and because he's been humiliated and he feels like I've disrespected him and he has to prove a point. When he comes back in, I can't back it down anymore. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. So rather than try to, assert my authority and my manhood or all that other egotistical BS, isn't it better just to say, hey, brother, I'm really sorry. You're welcome to go in front of me if you want, and let it go, because I'm going to get my coffee 15 seconds later instead of causing a problem that maybe will change the way my day looks.
Yeah.
And so ego is the enemy, man. And certainly we need to be respectful. We need to be all that. But if we can just turn the other cheek, as the good book says, and if somebody is trying to really hurt you, it's not about a slap. If someone is insulting you, man, be the bigger person and walk away. Let it go.
Yeah.
And you never know what kind of hell that person's been through that caused them to react that way to you. It might have nothing to do with you.
Yeah, yeah. This is a great kind of bridge between this talk and the talk I had with Sakan, because Sakan and I talked a little bit about this too. It's like, as just grown-up adults, a lot of times we have to remember, take a few more seconds to process first before we react, right? I gave Sakan this example. One time, my friend, we were all out eating, like having a good time, and we were playing a board game. And my friend had all his food stacked up, like blocking half the board game. So I went to move his stuff more towards him, and he like snapped at me in front of everyone. And, I'm not going to snap back, right? But I told him calmly, I'm like, dude, your stuff is in the way. I'm just trying to move your stuff. And then it took him a day later, and then a day later he realized, oh, that's what Jerry was doing. But, like, he really snapped at me. But, like, I thought about an incident like that. Like, people do that kind of stuff all the time. And, like, it was good that I was his friend. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But, like, with your example, with a lot of life examples, we do that to strangers. We assume they have ill intention, or we assume this or that, but it could just be a misunderstanding, or maybe we ourselves are at fault, right? But we need to take the time to process first.
Yeah. Well, and again, to me, the big thing is it worth going to the extreme? Because after I respond, I have no idea what this guy's going to do in response to me.
Yeah.
And then I don't have choice anymore. Yeah. So is it worth it? Is it something that I'm willing to escalate over? And usually, almost 100% of the time, the answer is a resounding no.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in a knife fight because of coffee line placement.
Yeah.
And it can be that stupid because people are that stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. And not to pick on this friend, but I had another incident with him where one time I was ordering food, and then I came back and he was having an argument with someone. I was like, what's going on? And apparently, like, he sat somewhere and a guy wanted to sit there, and the guy was like, they were having an argument about where to sit. And then, like, I'm thinking about, like, your example, right? Like, part of the reason why the guy was trying to take my friend's spot was because the guy had a wife who was pregnant. So he felt like, oh, because my wife's pregnant, she has a right to sit even though you are here first. And so, like, I'm thinking about, like, that could have gone so wrong because my friend, he's just very reactive, right? So, you know, he's, like, not backing down. What if the guy in his mind, he's like, you know, this guy's threatening my wife now, you know? And it could have escalated so bad. And I didn't even think about that. But, you know, I was just there. I didn't, like, escalate, but I was just like, okay, all right, you know? But like, you really have to pick your battles and really control your ego. And like John said so brilliantly, so what if you get your coffee 15 minutes or you have to walk 5 steps to another seat or whatever?
Oh, man, you know, and what you said right there is critical. Like, you have to pick your battles, but here's the thing. Is that even a battle to have?
Exactly.
You know, it's like, yeah, life is unfair and people are rude, but I'm an adult. And I tell this to my guys all the time, like, that's called adulting, overlooking other people's offense and saying, you know what, I'm really sorry you're having a bad day, brother. And you know what, I'm happy to stand over here and eat my In-N-Out. You know, you sit down, you know. And certainly if I saw a pregnant woman, that goes without saying. But, you know, in these examples that happen day in and day out, and you know what I really believe it is people have forgotten what it is to be really life and limb threatened. And when you dealt with violence on that level, and certainly our military people and the boys in blue and women in blue, you know, they deal with that stuff on a daily basis. But a lot of the general population never has. Yeah. So we have a culture growing up watching mixed martial arts and things on which are actually pretty violent, right? And all of a sudden we think that, hey, I'm angry, so I can just assert myself and do this stuff. And the problem is, things happen in real life you could never predict, and people make stupid decisions, and people get hurt really badly when they shouldn't, right? I mean, it was shocking to me how often I saw really, really bad people not get hurt. Like, I saw a guy who had just stolen a purse from an old lady, hit her in the head, runs out in the middle of the street, gets hit by a taxi going 35, 40 miles an hour. The guy rolls like 50 feet, stands up and walks away, and he doesn't even have a scuff on his clothes, right? And then I've seen a guy who's like a kind old gentleman step off a curb, slip, fall down, and die because he hit his head wrong on the curb. I mean, it's shocking. So when you go into something like that and you think, you know, things escalate quickly and someone's pushing on you, you have no idea if a knife's going to come out. Yeah. And when you're so tunnel vision and focused on, you know, this threat and what's going on, your odds of you seeing that drops very, very quickly. Yeah. And so to take that chance, to me, not to mention about the whole adulting thing, just from a risk standpoint, why would you ever put yourself at risk? Yeah. Why? Yeah. People are crazy. Yeah. People are crazy. Exactly. Don't take a chance. Walk away. Yeah,
totally. And you mentioned media. I was going to add to that, which is, you know, in like, I think it was the 60s, but there was a phase of Hollywood where I'm thinking of a specific movie in particular by Gregory Peck, where like he portrayed a very gentlemanly but very manly guy who like knew when to back down. In fact, most of the movie he was actually backing down until he was forced not to. And it wasn't like that kind of stereotype of like, ooh, I do not want to fight you because I could hurt you. No, it's like he was just like a gentleman. It's like, no, it's just not worth it. And then, you know, but I feel like that trope, that type of like masculinity, we don't see that anymore in media. Instead, it's like, oh, he has to be like, I hate that word so much. He has to be the alpha male. He has to take charge of every situation. He has to assert himself all the time. It's like, that's replaced that kind of like Gregory Peck type of like, know when to talk, know when to be silent, know when to back down type of guy.
Yeah, you know, there's two sayings that jump into mind. One of them was from the late, great Larry Hartzell, and one of them's from my father, actually. And Larry Hartzell, who was, you know, an original Bruce Lee student and just an incredible, you know, if you ever saw the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Fulop, it was rumored that was loosely based off the true life events of Larry Hartzell, right? I mean, yeah, like no joke, right? And Grudan says he actually saw him sidekick a door off a Cadillac. Like, this man was one of Larry Holmes' sparring partners for boxing. Like,
wow.
No, right? But Larry would say, don't mistake kindness for weakness.
Wow.
Don't mistake kindness for weakness.
Yeah, yeah.
And my dad would say, be a meek man. And meekness is not weakness. It's power under control. And there's something to be said about that, and sort of the archetype of the, who we would think of as the classic warrior or martial arts master. The one that you would think is the least offensive, the least dangerous, but actually is the one that's going to sort you out if you have a problem. They're going to take care of it. Mm-hmm. And not to hit that movie again, but to quote Roadhouse, there's a great saying in there, which sort of was the mantra of my 90s years in the work bars, was, those who are looking for a fight are rarely ever a match for those who are ready for one.
Yes, yes.
And, this whole idea of, are you capable of great violence? And if you are, you ought to be afraid of that. And that should never come out unless it absolutely has to, which doesn't mean ego. It means life or limb. And when that happens, then you use it without passion, without anger, without malice. It's just a tool to take care of violence that needs to go away. But until that time, you shouldn't be threatening. You shouldn't be egotistical in using that. I was in, my wife and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro a number of years ago, and I was in Tanzania, and we were getting ready to climb the mountain. And at 16,500 feet, my wife had an altitude emergency, and we had to descend emergency down to the base of the mountain. So we're at the hotel, but we're there 3 days earlier than the rest of the group, and so we had paid for a certain amount of days. So we had to pay extra days. So the hotel manager comes and says, hey, can I take you to the bank? Can we get some money? I said, yeah, absolutely. So I was wearing a martial arts T-shirt of some kind, which I, almost every day I am. And he looks at me as we're driving in his car, and he says, do you do that? And I said, well, yeah, a little bit. Why? And I'm just chuckling. He said, because I would ask that you'd help me with a favor. Wow. And I said, maybe. What kind of favor? I'm suspicious right away. And he said, this man owes me money and he won't pay me. Will you break his legs for me and I'll pay you? Like, this literally happened to me, and I'm thinking, this is like, where's the candid camera? This can't be real, And I said, no, of course not. And, and he said, but you have special power. And I said, yes, but with power comes responsibility, And I started to explain what we're talking about. And he just shook his head and he said, if that were me, I'd be a feared man. I'd be a feared man. And I thought to myself, wow, I couldn't believe that he was serious, but he was deadly serious.
Wow.
Incidentally, what was really funny is the next day we got a phone call at that hotel, and the receptionist brought the phone up and said, it's the police, they want to talk to you. And I thought, oh no, here we go. It ended up being the commander of the local police brigade. He wanted to come and meet me, and he had found our videos online after we were talking to this guy. He found some videos, and so 2 days later he showed up with 7 men, and they were the training cadre for all of the Tanzanian National Police. And came in and had a chance to talk with them and show them some stuff and work with them a little bit. But anyway, I just, it's this whole idea of having, power without having any sort of control on it is just scary in any form of life. And so I think part of the culture we're missing today with the martial arts is this idea of respect and control and, this meekness of being able to be, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war kind of thing, Yeah. I'd rather be able to sit quietly with my sword at my side and not be a threat to somebody, but be ready.
Yeah. Wow. And I think this is just a perfect segue to talk about. So after Minneapolis, you kind of went to Europe and you traveled abroad. You were doing bodyguard work and all that. How did that get started? What made you decide to kind of go to that phase of your life?
Yeah, so when I was in university, I actually met a girl from Europe and ended up getting married, and so we went back to her home country, and but because of the work I'd been doing in the States and because the people I had connections with, when I got to that country in Europe, I had more experience than most police officers in the country had. And so I was working at a data company, actually doing some server stuff in a data company. And one of the other guys I worked with, his dad had a security company. And so when we got to be friends, he finally said, hey, would you, come meet my dad? And when I did, he invited me to be, train their team. And he had bodyguard teams. They had just worked with the Dalai Lama as he had toured that party in Europe, and his staff, and worked with different music groups and different things. But what really caught my heart is they also worked with domestic abuse victims and people who have been subjugated to human trafficking. And so I thought, yeah, I'll work with you guys. And that led to being recruited to be a part of an international team that they headed up, and we did work in, Eastern, Western Europe and other places as well. And it was a good thing because they were really good people. And actually I'm very close with a number of those people still today, and that's, been 20 years now almost.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then when you launched the first jiu-jitsu school in Tanzania, was that part of like your journey in Europe, or was that later on?
Yeah, that was later on. So I had it was actually in Uganda. But
sorry, Uganda.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We my wife and I were working with my sister and brother-in-law who are missionaries in northern Uganda. And of course, Uganda has been through just a really rough period of 40 years of war, including the whole Kony 2012 campaign. I don't know if you remember that, where this rogue guy is literally stealing children and doing horrific things, and I'm not going to say them, on here. I can tell you later, but you would not believe some of the things I've heard from people, even some of my students there. And so as we were there working with them, another funny story, the day we arrived there, my brother-in-law had talked to one of the politicians and told him about some of the things I've been doing. And in Uganda, it's against the law to practice martial arts unless it's specifically licensed by the government.
Oh.
So the only three martial arts that had been officially recognized were boxing, kickboxing, and taekwondo. And so my brother-in-law had talked to this official regarding some land that they were working on, a project. And this official actually was a taekwondo guy. So when he told him about me, he was very interested. So the day we landed, we had to drive 6 hours north from Entebbe up towards the Sudan border. And my wife and I are tired, we're sleepy, jet lag. We just come in from LA, and we walk into this room, and this official comes in. He gets on the phone, and a motorcade pulls in. As we're standing there, the head of security for the president of Uganda, for all of northern Uganda, comes in. The mayor of the town, a mayoral candidate, so like a high-placed official, this other guy who's the highest elected official in the whole region, and the chief of police, they all walk in, they point at me, they point to an alcove, and they said, come in here and sit down. I'm freaking out. I'm still jet lagged. So we sit down, and they said, what are you planning on teaching our people? Because we don't want you raising a rebel army up here.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, well, JKD, Kali, that stuff's out, right? And so I said, I'm going to teach jiu-jitsu, which is a great way to build people's character and build community, and it's a sport, it's like wrestling. And they said, okay, show us. So the next day, that elected official, one of the mayoral candidates, and they got one of the taekwondo, Ugandan Olympic Taekwondo Committee guys, who's the top coach in northern Uganda, to come in, and I did a private class. They loved it. And I'm a Gracie Baja guy through and through, and so I just took them through a Gracie Baja, beginner class. They said, tomorrow we do the same thing. Tomorrow we do, and so again and again and again, within 2 weeks, I had over 35 people, all of them martial arts guys from other things, in a room that is a standalone cinder block building in the middle of a field, no windows, half-inch puzzle mats. If you go on my Facebook, you can see some of the pictures from there. And these guys, I ended up training them for 18 months, living there. And after we left, I stayed in contact with them via social media, at least once a week. I'm in contact with them now as they're dealing with the virus, and it's hard for them right now. And they train 7 days a week, twice a day.
Wow.
And even without me there, these guys trained hardcore. So in February, and so they were the first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Uganda, period. The first school there. And so because of the governmental connections, they actually got the members of parliament to make this an official sport. And now there's 4 schools there. There's a black belt from Brazil living in Kampala, which is the capital city. And so he and another guy in Tanzania and another guy, all Brazilians in Kenya, started the East African Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation. And we had the second championships this last February, and I was able to be there with some guys from the U.S. We coached the team there in Gulu, Uganda, and then took them to the championships, and they swept it.
Wow.
And actually, Marcelo Garcia, I don't know if you know that name, just royalty. His instructor, 6th degree from Brazil, was there, and so he did all the refereeing and had a lot of fun with him, and he was really impressed with the guys up in Gulu, and I'm thrilled, And for me, this is history because, if we look fast forward another 5-10 years, these guys, if they keep going, they'll be black belts, and they'll be the first black belts in Eastern Africa. And if you look at the history of the first non-Brazilian black belts in North America, they're royalty, Chris Howard and some of these guys. And so to be able to be a part of helping to plant that seed and help these people see the beauty of this martial art in Uganda is just an absolute blessing and a treasure. So we'll continue to keep helping them. And what's really been interesting is because of that, and because of the missionary sort of connections that I have around the world, we've been invited to 19 countries to help them start programs, jiu-jitsu programs. And we were in India shortly after we were in Uganda, in Bangalore and Delhi and Calcutta and 6 cities we went around to. And I talked to people about jiu-jitsu. And when they found out I was with Gracie Baja and my rank, they said, "Please, sir, would you stay here and teach?" And there, I think, is one black belt in the whole country in India. And all the places we were at, the highest ranked people were blue belts. And so, martial arts is such a great way to connect people and such a great way to build community and to help people, literally become better human beings if we teach the right thing with it and not just how to hurt people.
Wow, that's awesome. So, you do jiu-jitsu and you started in karate. So after karate, that's when you found out about like JKD and all that, right? So it was like karate, then JKD and the Kali and his scream and all that, and then Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Is that kind of how your martial arts journey went?
Yeah, it went from karate to judo. I was lucky enough to have a 7th degree black belt judo instructor teaching at the same YMCA I started karate at.
Wow.
And Master Mehdi Mohammedian, the legend in the judo community in North America. But I also had a chance, a friend of mine said, "Hey, we need to go to this camp in southwestern Wisconsin in 1989. And so, little did I know, we were Dan Inosanto and Chai Sirsu and Larry Hartzell and a bunch of other guys, and Rick Fay and Greg Nelson, and just the royalty of that world, And so that started a fascination and like, I need this, and so anyway, through the JKD Kali stuff, you study a lot of different arts from all over the world, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, of course, stormed onto the scene in 1993 with all of us. It had already been a huge part of the Inosanto Academy, and most people had it for years before that. But for the rest of us, with Royce Gracie and UFC 1, it was like, whoa, BJJ. So that's when it kind of hit Minneapolis as well, and Greg Nelson started training under Master Pedro Sauer. And I thought, I've had a judo background, and I'm doing all this weapon stuff. I'm fighting, real fights in the street. I don't need to be learning another, sport. Man, I could hit myself, slap myself. I had a chance to start back then. And actually, a good friend of mine named John Rankin, who was a pro MMA fighter, was training at that time with Greg Nelson, and we would have little chats back and forth. And he'd say, "John, you're not fighting in the ring. You don't know how to fight." And I'd say, "John, you're not fighting in the bar every night. You don't know how to fight." And But anyway, so I was later training in the early 2000s. I was later training out in California and working with a guy named Paul Vunak. And Paul just said to me, and I ended up, he asked me to live close to him and train with him daily. So I spent a lot of time training with him and training people for him when he wasn't wanting to teach. And he just said, hey, you got to get some BJJ, And so I thought, okay, I'll start looking. I pulled off the road, saw a little sandwich board sign next to the road, and said, new Jiu-Jitsu Academy, call this number. I did. The guy who answered was a guy named Professor Flavio Almeida, who is the head of JC Baja for North America, the little brother of Ricardo Almeida, of UFC fame. And so Professor Flavio said, hey, come to the school. And I went there, signed up immediately, bought 10 hours of private lessons, and never turned back, brother. I trained as much jiu-jitsu as I could. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the people, the culture, and just certainly the art is a beautiful thing.
Wow. So let's talk about the programs you offer now to teach people, self-defense. How much of is there like JKD in it? How much is there jiu-jitsu in it? How much is there other stuff in it?
Sure. So right now I created a program called Street Smart Defender. And there's 3 levels of that program. The first level is called Escape the Threat. The second level is called Engage the Threat. The third level is called Eliminate the Threat. Mm-hmm. And those are sort of standalone self-defense programs for people who aren't really interested in martial arts. And so they really have nothing to do with martial arts. And I'll get back to that in a second. For the martial arts folks and for the combatives people, I have an organization called Through the Fire. And Through the Fire, if you look at my website at PowerU360, you'll see a little 4-minute video of me talking about why it's called that and what that name actually means. And that's pretty significant to me. But so in the Through the Fire program, I just launched a program that's for free. It's on my YouTube channel, and you can see it on my Facebook, and certainly I'm still integrating some of that into the website. But it's called Garage Sessions, Through the Fire Garage Sessions. And basically the inspiration for this was, I have private students coming to my home here in Thailand now. And so what would it be like if you were just coming to my home to get some private lessons and you've never done martial art before? And so primarily the idea right now is around people who can't get to a school because of the quarantine, but it's also certainly to help people have something to do with their family, their friends, their partner, their kids, to be able to experience martial art by themselves and just to expose people in a way that's non-threatening and it's free, totally free. That's also going to lead into a more closed group that will be kind of a minimal subscription kind of thing where I will actually spend time programming people to do a class. So it won't just be an information thing, but me leading you through a class to help you grow in the martial art. Through the Fire also has a more intense program that is running Sakan as part of this. That is specifically developed to develop instructors or high-level practitioners. So I don't talk about just what and how to do the what, but why. What are the master keys that make this work? And so JKD Kali, and even to some extent Jiu-Jitsu, these martial arts are like massive encyclopedias of knowledge. And if you don't understand, when I started, I didn't understand how does this stuff fit together, And basically the picture is, and I wish I could draw you a little picture right now. I apologize for moving the phone around. But the way you have to look at it is this is you, this is where you want to get to. And you need to be able to have a track to get you where you want to go instead of kind of wandering out here in the wilderness and trying to figure it out. Bruce Lee said, famously, he said, research your own experience, add what is, absorb what is useful, disregard what is not, add what is specifically your own. But here's the thing. In the normal JKD sort of rhythm and flow that we have through Guru Dan, there's 28 arts that we study. 28 whole martial arts. And so that's a lot of information. And so what I tell people is you're looking at an old-fashioned encyclopedia set. That's like the 30 books on the shelf. Yeah. Do you want to have to learn all of that? Or would you rather I just give you the answer key, my cheat sheet that tells you exactly what you need to learn to grow so that you can become really good, understand the keys behind it all, And then you're not looking at the fingernail, you're looking at all that heavenly glory that Bruce Lee talked about. The point of these systems is to teach you the theory and to be able to function, not to memorize a bunch of stuff. And so through the fire, that program is really my attempt to take people and give them what I wish I would have had when I was growing up in the martial art. If someone would have taken me aside and said, John, this is what you need. And so that's what it does. And that program, we meet bi-monthly or twice a month, live via Zoom or in person when we can. And that's great. I've got people, had over 140 people in 9 countries go through that program, and some of those people have become my closest friends. We build a big family. And one of my things is we don't have hierarchical nonsense and egotistical garbage. It's, hey, we're people together. Let's learn, let's have fun, and teach me what you can teach me. So that's through the fire. Back to the street smart. I've been, through the years, teaching self-defense. I've been asked since the early 90s to teach self-defense classes because of having, the martial arts background I do. What I found was when I was in Minneapolis in the later 90s, specifically one day I taught a class at a university, had about 200, 300 people sitting in this auditorium. I walked out there with my black belt on, my uniform, my gi, and everybody's watching, and yay, it's neat. And hey, if somebody grabs you here, move your hand this way. If somebody does this, move that, do this, do that. And I did a typical self-defense class you might see. Later that evening, I got attacked when I was working.
Wow.
And as I'm taking this guy into custody, I was thinking to myself, I'm just going to do that takedown that I did when I was showing in class today. The guy pivoted, spun on me, and did something I didn't expect, and I totally froze, Jerry. I froze. And I still ended up winning, but I froze in the moment. And later that night, I had a crisis of conscience, and I thought to myself, hey, if you're honest about this, you're the instructor who's been doing this for a decade, and you can't even make it work. How in the world is that young lady from the cornfields of Iowa who just watched you do this for 2 hours, how is she actually going to make this work? Impossible, right? Because of psychology, physiology, impossible. And so I started to really delve into the psychology of threat response and what happens to you when you're afraid, really afraid, not just nervous, really afraid. What does fight or flight do to you? What does adrenaline do? What does cortisol? What does all this stuff do when it hits your system? Yeah. And so I quit teaching self-defense because I thought I'm not going to lie to people. I'm not going to get up there, pat them on the back, say, hey, good job, you watched me demonstrate, now you're safe. Yeah. Because we all know that the average person that goes to those things is not going to go and take that information and train it for years to make it part of their muscle memory so that it actually will be functional for them. Yeah. They're not going to do it. And so I let it go. I still worked with military and police guys because they're willing to train, some of them, But later on, I had been working in Europe, and I got asked with a friend of mine named Brenda King, who's a martial arts superstar, and you actually ought to have her on here as well sometime. Black belt under Jean-Jacques Machado, 5th-degree black belt in Kempo, 5th-degree black belt in Taekwondo, instructor under Guru Dan. She's a superstar. Wow. So she and I got asked to work with SAS flight crews out of Copenhagen after the 9/11 incident. And they weren't worried about terrorism so much as soccer hooligans flying back and forth in Europe causing problems. And so they asked us to deal with flight crews. So we were doing that. And Brenda pulled me aside in the middle of the class, and she said, hey, John, can you step outside with me? I said, yeah, sure. We walked out, and she said, hey, you don't understand self-defense from a women's standpoint at all. And I thought, I wasn't offended because she's a very good friend of mine and I trust her, but I was hurt. Like, what am I missing? And she said, hey, it's about getting killed or raped. It's not about getting made to look stupid or getting hit. And so rather than seeing things sort of from a frat boy bouncer perspective, I started to look at things and say, what is the real outcome if we make a mistake here and we don't teach people real things they can actually do when they really need it? What actually is going to happen? And so as I started to study, one of the things became very apparent to me. And I actually worked with a neuroscientist out of Pasadena who now lives up in Colorado Springs, and had him explain this stuff to me. And one of the things that happens is under extreme stress, when you have a fight or flight response, literally your prefrontal cortex completely shuts off.
Mm-hmm.
Your adrenaline spikes, your heart rate goes up, your breath rate, tunnel vision, audio exclusion, you can't hear stuff, but your prefrontal cortex shuts off. And what that means is you lose the ability to have two things primarily for us. The first thing is you lose the ability to have logical, sequential thought processes.
Mm-hmm.
And you lose the ability to make choices. So if you have a list of 10 things and you're trying to figure out what to do in that moment, you're not going to be able to make that choice.
Yeah.
That ability is literally gone. The second thing is if you know how to do something and you know what to do, but it takes a sequential process of moves and it's not like falling down and catching yourself, like tripping, like coughing, it's not motor muscle function, you will not be able to do it because the part of your brain that runs that is completely shut off.
Yeah.
So even if you know do step 1, step 2, step 3, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And that's why victims of violence will report not being able to dial 911.
Wow.
They'll hit 911, 911, 911, but they can't hit send.
Oh.
You have people who literally can't take a chain off a door. They literally can't unlock their car door because their remote is set to hit it twice to unlock.
Oh.
And so because they even know that, but to make a logical choice, they can't do it. And so the brain completely freezes. And so you end up in either a fight or flight, or now some people will say a freeze response. And the freeze response is really the brain asking another part of the brain and saying, what do I do here? I need the logical best thing to do. Or you hear people say, well, I would do this. It only makes sense.
Yeah.
Literally, that part of the brain is not functioning. So it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So without having something, part of your motor muscle function, you're never going to now, by the grace of God and good luck and all that stuff, anything can happen. But as a general rule, unless something is hardwired into your brain in the neural pathway, it will not happen. You can't think of it and manufacture it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why people who watch a video or hear people talk about this or that and say, well, it's just obvious. I would just do this. My thing is, no, you won't. No, you won't. And it's not me. It's science and human physiology.
Yeah, yeah.
So what we see is, so the training then becomes putting people in a position to use 4 different techniques that are derived from 4 normal body patterns that every single normal person learns before they can even speak. So you do these things in your daily life every day, Jerry. So, martial artists, we say you have to do things 10,000 times to be able to do it on automatic pilot, right, as a reflex. And that's why martial artists train for years and years and years and years and years to make these skills become automatic so they'll come out when I don't have to think under stress. So, but what if we can take things that you have already been doing your whole life, so they're already there, weaponize those skills, and then attach them to the physiology of a stress response in your body so they come out automatically. And so it takes about 2 hours, and literally we have people contacting us from around the world that have had training as long as 3 or 4 years ago saying that saved my life. Thank you. Never trained before, never trained after. But it's once we do the class, and at the end of it, we take about half an hour to do something called stress inoculation, where we attach the physical skill you've now honed and sharpened, and we attach it to the stress response in your body through a play. And that literally, physiologically creates a new neural synapse connection in the brain. And the scientists told me that'll never disappear unless they have a traumatic brain injury or some kind of a debilitating disease. Otherwise, it's there for life, and you don't have to worry about forgetting it or trying to remember. It just comes out automatically.
That's awesome. And I just adding from what I know about science, it just makes perfect sense. Because if you don't attach some kind of, but you said 4 moves, but I'm just going to say 1 move. If you don't even attach 1 move to a stress response, you're going to not use that move, right? So like,
exactly.
Just like me trying to groove off this, think about if like I start training someone to every time someone like does this or someone does like, what the you looking at, you know, he just raises his hand. So then eventually they practice that just becomes a natural response to whatever. So now think about what John's teaching, you know, more complicated, more even direct of what the body's kind of like used to. Then it's like you have more than just this response. I just pulled this out of my ass, so to speak. Well, like, you know, you have more than just this response to whatever stress response that gets triggered in you.
Yeah, so let me just I'll give you a taste of the first piece of this so you can understand kind of how it works. Mm-hmm. So without thinking, everybody, including you, my friend, point at my nose on the screen. Ready, go. Mm-hmm. Point at my nose. Did you miss it?
No, I did not.
Okay, use your other hand. Go. Did you miss it?
Mm-mm.
No, because every single day of your life, to pick up your spoon, your coffee cup, your cell phone, to turn on a light, you have to point at it before you actually do what you want to do. When you were a little kid, before you could tell mommy and daddy what you wanted, you could point at it and cry.
Yeah.
This is a natural response. So what we do is we say, what if we point at the eyeball?
Ah, I see where this is going.
Yeah, so anytime someone puts their hands on you, now if they're not putting their hands on you and you have space, you leave.
Yeah.
The first level of the course is escape, right? I want to get away. I don't want to fight you. And I never want to teach a lady or a man to exchange blows. Why in the world do you want to put your hands up, get in a kickboxing stance, and roll the dice and hope you're better than this guy who's probably been in a lot of fights and has caught you off guard by surprise? Why?
Yeah.
But if you have somebody touch you, grab you, put their hands on you, and statistically in North America, 9 out of 10 times a man grabs a woman, it's to take her somewhere or to make her feel small and weak by putting her down lower. Interestingly enough, FBI statistic, 9 out of 10 times a man takes a woman or a child somewhere, they kill them.
Wow.
90% of the time. So this is imperative that we teach our friends, family, loved ones to not go with somebody, okay? So if somebody touches you, they're close enough for you to touch their eyeball. And if you've trained that reaction for that hand to fly out with no telegraph to touch the eye or the glasses in your case, it causes a flex reflex in that person. They can't help.
Yeah.
Their hands will go to protect the face, which means they're not on you anymore.
Yeah.
And statistically, FBI statistic again in North America, 85% of the time, an attacker was escaped. Somebody could get away by 40 feet, 35 to 40 feet. 85% of the time, they did not follow it.
Wow.
So if you are taken by surprise, you're worried, you're nervous, whatever, somebody takes you by surprise, grabs a hold of you, now I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times you can get away. And if they do follow you, it's not a surprise anymore. You know they're coming.
Yeah.
It gives you a chance. Distance equals time. Time gives you options.
Yeah. Dude, I love it because I never even thought about an eye poke as that. Like, literally, it's the same motion as point to the eye. And that's so brilliant. Like you said, every kid knows how to point. Every toddler knows how to point. So if you basically take an existing connection and just couple it with the stress response. That's brilliant.
And then we make it faster because you need to have a kinesthetic awareness of your body in a different way.
Yeah.
Basically, your whole life, when you point, pick up something, move your hand, it's at the same speed.
Yeah.
So neurologically, you have a speed limit, right?
Yeah.
So what you need to do is learn to make that quicker.
Yeah.
So we go through a training process, and what I tell people is, you can watch the video and tell me I know how to poke the eye. Yeah, you do. But to make it work in real life, no. If you didn't know what chocolate was, you never heard of it, you never smelled it, saw it, heard the word, you have no idea what chocolate was. And I hold a piece here up on this channel and I show it to you and I start to tell you about it. How long would I have to talk before you could understand what it tastes like? You'd never understand what it tastes like until you what? You taste it.
Yeah.
You experience it with your senses, and we call that kinesthetic awareness. Having a stress response and moving your hand in that manner to somebody's eyes, you don't understand it until you have felt it. And then once you go through a training experience that exposes you to that, you got it for the rest of your life. You understand it. You tasted the chocolate.
Wow. Wow.
And it works.
Sounds great. Yeah, sounds.
Works.
Yeah, this is why I'm so happy we're talking about this. And for viewers of Fight Commentary Breakdowns, the links to all this will be in the description and the pinned comments, so you guys can go visit it. Because, like, I think a lot of in general self-defense stuff gets overcomplicated, I think. And what I like about everything we've learned talking to you is just like how it can just be broken down into like almost like little mottos, so to speak. Like the first thing I learned from you is if you even have to think about it, you probably should walk away, right? That's such a great one. And then the next one is just like, okay, like in certain situations, there's ways of just like thinking about it that you're not even thinking about it. It's like,
the thing is, what I often tell people is there's a huge misnomer when it comes to self-defense, and people tend to believe for whatever reason, and it's because of martial artists and movies, that you have to be a big bad black belt to be able to protect yourself. And the real truth is, and what I tell people often is, I believe 100%, I believe it, like it's not just words, that self-defense is your birthright as a human being. Mm-hmm. You should not have to live your life in fear for your loved ones, for yourself, walking down the street. Especially in our society today, it's violent. But as a people, as human beings, we should be beyond that. But we're not. Why? Because of ego, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so, to be able to learn and know that you could put somebody through a training process that in 2 hours will literally give them tools for the rest of their life that will not turn them into, I tell people, you're not a Navy SEAL now. You're not a cop. You're not learning how to take control and custody. You're not learning how to eliminate enemy personnel. And you're certainly not Batman. You're not going, you're not prepared to go out and be a vigilante. But what you are prepared to is go home to your family.
Yeah.
Get away from crazy. You got enough crazy in your life. Walk away and get home because it's not what you're getting involved with. And so the escape program, law enforcement loves it too because we're not teaching people how to break nose and do all this kind of stuff. Now, can you hurt somebody by poking them in the eye? Sure. But that's not my intent. My intent is to go home.
Yeah. I love it.
And there's a massive difference there, massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I love about what you're saying is because you're telling people, what is your intent? It's to go home. I think what it does is, in people's psychology, the moment they have space, they have room, they're going to run. Right? Exactly. I think the one of the fears of like people who do martial arts or people who do self-defense, etc., is that because now you have some skill, when it's time for you to, like run, you don't, right? You see it all the time. Like it cringes me out, and I get why they do it, but I see like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people, and I'm not picking on them, but very skilled Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people tangling with people on the street, which 9 times out of 10 they're winning, but what if that person had a knife? What if that person had a gun, right?
Exactly. What if their friend comes up with a gun or a knife or a baseball bat? And that's exactly right. Because the way we teach, and I've actually seen this in real life, like somebody getting accosted and I was moving in to help them, but as they were getting accosted, they actually put their hands out inviting the bad guy to grab them because that's how they knew to defend themselves. Mm-hmm. So, there's something we talk about called the Law of Primacy, which states that what you do first and most in training is what you'll do first and most under stress. Yeah. So when all you've done, and again, I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not picking on that at all. I think for what it is, it's the best thing on earth. Yeah. But I don't think it's the best in every circumstance. Yeah. For instance, 50 yards away against a sniper rifle. Probably shouldn't be trying to pull guard on the guy, right? I'm being stupid, but you get what I'm saying, right? Yeah. And so we need to teach people. And so the primary training modality of Street Smart Escape is run. Yeah. Why do I poke the eye? So I can run. Yeah. Why do I do that? So I can run. That's the whole point. And I always tell people, hashtag I'm going home to Tina, my wife. That's my joke. Yeah. What are you doing going home?
I think I really, really like how we're shifting the paradigm. Like, you're shifting the paradigm in my head. Like, so now I'm not even thinking about run. I'm thinking about going home. That's how I'm going to think from now on. Going home. Because I think one of the fears of people when you tell them to run is they're like, well, run where? Like, how? Run, run home. Go home. go home, or go to the police station or something. Like, give them like a destination and not just a run. And like, that's the paradigm shift. That's always how I've been. Like, I've been in so many situations, and naturally it's just like, instead of thinking out running, I'm like, okay, how do I get inside? Like, usually that's my thought. How do I get inside, or how do I get to a place? So I'm always thinking of a destination. I really like how you're really helping me like put this paradigm in my head correctly.
And it's so important, Jerry, because again, under extreme duress, you do not have the ability to think logically.
Yeah.
So there to be, let's just jump back into that for just a second. Why does that happen? Because of adrenaline response.
Yeah.
What do we normally call that in North America? We call that the fight or flight response, right? And again, some people call it fight, flight, or freeze. But what fight or flight is completely and totally physiologically attached to two emotions. So the chemical coupled with the situation causes an emotional response. So if I say fight, what is the emotion attached to that in your mind?
I think it depends on the person, but it's usually anger or fear.
Yeah. Well, it's anger, but it would be what we call a phobic level anger, meaning there's no rationality, no ability, because again, your logical brain is turned off.
Yeah.
So it's a phobic level anger, which we call rage. Mm-hmm. So this is where you see, and you've seen it back, in the newspapers or the internet or whatever back in the day where, this housewife snapped and stabbed the guy 150 times.
I remember that. That was covered on like 60 Minutes and stuff. I remember that. Yeah.
So now, it used to be, oh, what a monster. This woman must be Hannibal Lecter, right? What normal person does that? But here's the point. In that moment, when her logical sequential brain got shut off and she was in a moment of rage, she was saying, you can't stop. You can't do this to me anymore.
Yeah.
There is no logic. She couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
There is no logic. And so now the law starts to see that and calls it a crime of passion, where they're starting to take this into account. Now, if we flip the script on that, what would be the emotion attached to that?
Probably more fear.
Fear, for sure. And again, a phobic level response of fear, we would say, is terror.
Terror, right? Yeah, exactly.
Terror. So when somebody comes into a theater and starts shooting people in waves are in terror, fleeing for their lives.
Yeah.
There is no logical thought, okay?
Yeah.
So when you have this happen to you, and it's real, right? When it really happens, it's not something you can control.
Yeah.
Another guy who wrote about a lot of this is a guy named David Grossman, who's very famous for some of his works after the Columbine shootings. Psychologist, Army Ranger, lecturer at West Point, works with law enforcement all over the world. And he said it's like a puppy hitting a screen door. When your psyche goes past logical sequential thought and this terror or rage takes over, you're not in control anymore. And that's why somebody with phobic fear of a snake, for instance, you can't have a discussion about it's a grass snake, it's not going to hurt you. Yeah. They're freaking out, right? They're gone. Yeah. And that's the puppy hitting the screen door. They are completely outside of the realm of logic.
Yeah.
And so we have to train people to do this. And specifically for me, it's about when you feel that terror, it doesn't mean you're not a man, you're not strong. It's a natural adrenaline response.
Yeah.
What happens when I feel rage? We need to teach them to run so that they don't stand over the person and stomp on their head, which is going to be a felonious assault charge, which is going to put you in jail, right? The second in law for self-defense worldwide, except some places in Africa, and worldwide, is if you stop the person's intent or ability to hurt you, to protect yourself, there has to be an ability or an intent to hurt you. If you stop that, you are obligated by law to stop your aggressive action. So if I continue because I'm locked in a state of rage and I can't think, if I haven't taught them, and my job is to teach you to escape for your safety as well. If I haven't taught you to run away and you're stuck there in a loop hurting this person, I've now got you in trouble because you're going to have to pay for your own crime.
Yeah.
So part of self-defense is what happens after the fight.
Yeah.
Right? In the movies, hey, you did awesome. You shot that guy. You escaped. You beat this guy up. Let's go get a beer, and you're good. You're the hero. High five, right? In reality, That's when the police come. That's when the court starts. That's when all these things happen.
Yeah.
The fight is over when it's over.
Yeah.
Many times that's when you have to worry about it just beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah, absolute powerful stuff, man. And my roommate who helps me with fight commentary breakdowns talks about this too. Like, when you think about real life situations versus like training in a gym or stuff, you have to think about the consequences when the fight's over too. And it's something that I think people don't think about. And, you know, I think one of the lessons from watching this video for viewers is like, just give yourself some time to think about some of the stuff. Like, research some of your laws and stuff. Like, get that clear too. Because, you know, one of my roommate has this story about one time a guy was like, you know, threatening him, right? So he was thinking about, one, okay, if this escalates, what would I do? But two, if it escalates and I have to strike him, how do I catch his head before his head hits the ground? You know, he's thinking like that. Because, you know, yes, you hit him in self-defense, but if his head hits the ground, he dies. Oh, no, right? So it's like, these are things that people don't even think about usually. But, you know, my roommate, he's a great Christian. He's a very trained martial artist. So, like, he thinks about these things.
Yeah, man, so do I. And again, if we go back to my earlier paradigm, if you have time to think about it, why are you there?
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you have to be, right?
Yeah.
Then it's different. But in a normal situation, like if I'm going to, you know, pick up food somewhere, there are other restaurants I can go. There's another coffee shop down the road, you know. Yeah. That's great. It's great. I'm glad to hear other people thinking like that because, you know, if you really are training yourself because you're wanting to be able to protect yourself, if you leave out the rest of that sort of social consequence stuff from your study, you're doing yourself a massive disservice.
Yeah. And one more thing I would love to add to this discussion is also, and it goes back to our culture, right? You're in Thailand now. I don't know how it is in America, but in America, because there's this kind of like, oh, you can't always be a sissy sometimes. Like, one of the safest things for people to do, which I see people not do as much, is, you know, when you're feeling uncomfortable and someone's coming your way, go cross the street, man. Don't be afraid to do that. But there's this like inherent thing, and even some of my friends called me out and they're like, Jerry, why are you being so scared? I'm like, it's not me being scared. It's like if I feel uncomfortable, I don't want to put myself at risk. You know, you could say there is some fear to it, but it's like it's way beyond that. But like this like mentality of, oh yeah, you don't have to be scared. You know, it's like that really affects things. And then I see like, you know, someone sketchy walking down the street, and there's just some like little girl. You know, like little girl, as in like a woman that's smaller than me. You know, she's on her cell phone and she's just like gonna be. She plays that game of if I just ignore this guy, he's not gonna do anything. And it's like, no, the response should be cross the street, get out of the direction that he's headed. But like, you don't see that as much, and part of it is our culture. It's like, yeah, well, you shouldn't judge people. We shouldn't prejudge people. We shouldn't be scared. You know, it's.
Yeah, let me talk to that just a little bit. That's a great point. You know. There's a bunch of things that come up, but before I forget, I want to suggest to everybody, if you haven't gotten it, if you haven't read it, please buy the book, The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. The Gift of Fear. Probably the penultimate work on something called pre-incident indicators. And basically, I'm not going to, you know, get the book. It's incredibly informative. It'll change the way you think about a lot of stuff. But the base premise is that fear, true fear, is actually a gift to you.
Yeah.
Not, hey, the sky is falling, not Chicken Little kind of fear, but like when your other than conscious brain picks up cues that are incongruous with a safe situation, and you might not really understand consciously why, you need to learn to recognize and notice that and then act accordingly, because it could very well save your life. Yeah. And now I wouldn't call that being afraid or fear. I would call that being sensitive to threat. And also just really understanding that you can be prepared without being paranoid. There's a big difference there. Yeah. You know? And as far as this whole, you know, it's my right, you don't have a right. Yeah, you know what? I understand. And I would never, you know, shame a woman. You know, there's this whole thing now with the Me Too thing. And I'm not coming out, please. I'm not on either side of that argument except in protecting people. 100%, okay? But it's a fallacy to think that evil doesn't exist. Yeah. And so it might be absolute. Well, let me look at it this way, okay? Working in downtown Minneapolis in the winter, ice on the road, all right? If I see the crosswalk signal turn and it's green for me and red for the oncoming car, and I step out there because it's my legal right, but that car can't stop because there's ice, I'm still going to get flattened and crippled, and it wasn't my right? I should have had the right of way, but the car couldn't stop.
Yeah.
My right plays nothing in that instance to that threat.
Yeah.
It's a lot the same when you deal with violent people.
Yeah.
You may have the right to walk down the street, and like I said, that's my belief. It's our birthright, right, to not have to be in fear. But if a bad person is coming towards you, it doesn't matter what your right is. They want to assault you, to take advantage of you, to take something from you. You have to take care of yourself. Yeah. Because unfortunately, in most instances, the police come to take reports about things that have already happened. They don't come to protect you.
Yeah, exactly.
So you need to be protecting yourself and your loved ones, not being paranoid, but being properly prepared and then being observant of your situation so that you can avoid a problem before it exists. And I applaud you, Jerry, for saying, hey, I crossed the road. Yeah. I do all the time, man. Yeah. And I'm usually the person that doesn't need to worry about that so much. But I would rather not have to deal with it and get my blood pressure up. Why do I even want to deal with that if I can just cross the road? Yeah. Why?
Exactly. And, the context of what I'm talking about, I used to live in downtown L.A., and, downtown L.A. is still not the safest place. It's probably going to take it 10 years for it to be a safe place. But it's just like, I still remember, weird times of the night, I'll see people who are just completely not self-aware. So I was one of those overachievers, and sometimes I thank goodness my office was only 2 blocks away from my apartment. But still, walking those 2 blocks, sometimes I'd walk home at 1 a.m., which is really stupid to do so in downtown L.A. But I've done that. And I remember sometimes I would see someone else who so unaware and just walking around, and I'm just like, wow, I feel like I should say something to that person, but then, I'm so tired, I don't want to mind that person's business. But, I see so much, lack of self-awareness, just like you said, John, your birthright to be safe. People don't have that awareness sometimes. So this is kind of a different topic, but self-awareness. It's a big, important thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just really understanding that, not everybody has your best interest at heart. Yeah. And it's sad, but it's just real. It's just true.
Yeah, exactly. John, why don't we end with this question? You are in Thailand. What got you to go to Thailand?
Well, to be honest with you, my wife and I have a real passion for helping those that can't help themselves. And so we work, there's a number of different things that we do, but one of the things that's a real passion for us is working with people who have been victimized, who are at risk of being victimized in some of the crimes of human trafficking and other things. And so currently we're working with a children's home, and we're teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to young Hill Tribe children and trying to help give them an understanding of self-worth and just space. And I don't want to say too much on an open forum because I would never want to insult or offend our hosts here. And we love the people of Thailand. We love this area of the world. But again, there are bad people that do bad things to people. And so to be able to come alongside and help empower them, encourage them, give them some skills. And so that's our heart. And again, we're working from here to other places in the world to do the same thing, and trying to partner with those that are doing that, and even trying to help give more skills to people to help further that reach into different areas of the world.
Wow, that's beautiful. And John, I'm so glad I brought you on Fight Commentary Breakdowns, because I can tell you really use your martial arts to try to help people. I can tell you're really trying to use your martial arts to help people. And I'm sure you and your wife had made a positive impact in so many people's lives.
You know what? Thank you for saying that. I couldn't see doing anything else. It's so rewarding to see somebody have a realization. I've literally had in this country, we've had after classes, young ladies come up to us with tears in their eyes and say, "Nobody ever told us we could protect ourselves."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just assumed that you're going to be victimized.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever told us. You know, we worked in a school that was closed to a certain group of people in India, and they had never allowed other people to come in. And when we told them we wanted to help protect their girls, we had 66 young ladies and their teachers, and they absolutely loved it because no one had ever come and told them that, number one, was it possible to protect yourself, and number two, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because no one has the right to hurt you like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm gonna get a little personal here, but I remember when I was young and I would see my dad hit my mom, and I would talk to some family friends. They'd be like, "Well, don't try to defend your mom because then your dad's gonna beat you up." But then it's like you think about applying what you guys are teaching to other housewives whose husbands might hit them, and it's like, no, it's your right to defend yourself. If he hits you, you call the cops and everything, get out of the situation, but it's your right not to take a beating. And
that's right.
And that's why when I hear that you're helping, children, helping people who've been trafficked, helping people who experienced domestic abuse, it just makes my heart really warm. I'm so glad you're doing that because there's just so much, a lot of abusers, they create this kind of learned helplessness in the people they abuse. And the first step in what you guys are teaching is to teach people, no, don't freeze, right? That freezing is part of a learned helplessness response in many cases.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll tell you, I never, ever, ever would want to use somebody's pain to make a point. But I'm going to in this case because I think it's so poignant because people don't believe me when I'm telling them this, okay? And again, if any of the family, any of the friends are seeing this, please forgive me in advance. Not my intent to hurt this person or hurt her memory again. But if you would go and just do a Google search on the name Carly Bruscia, and there's a little girl in Florida, and you watch a video, and it's 30 seconds, but you'll see a live video stream from a camera in the back of a gas station with a car wash in Florida. You can see in the background men on a driving range hitting golf balls, okay, in the view of the camera. She's walking across, a man walks up to her, grabs her arm, says something, have no idea, there's no sound what she says, but you can see she's not comfortable. He walks away with her, holding her hand. You can see she's not going willingly, but she goes along. That was the last time she was ever seen alive. Okay?
I've seen footage of that. I remember that was reported all over the news. I remember
absolutely.
That.
And here's the only reason why I bring this up, okay, mm-hmm. Jerry? This is the only reason because, again, I would never want to use somebody else's pain as an example, okay? But here's the point, and if it can save one person, it's worth it, okay? Every single, and this gets me passionate, every single place I go, I ask people, did your dad, uncle, brother, friend, somebody tell you to poke him in the eye, scream, and kick him in the groin if that happened? Of course, and nowhere that I've been, even in Africa, did they say, somebody didn't say, hey, yes, they taught me that. Everybody gets taught that. So why, when you watch that little girl get abducted, doesn't she do that? I guarantee you she was taught that too. Because if you haven't tasted the chocolate, if you haven't gone through some experience that allows you to deal with the feelings of adrenaline and those things coursing through your body, and attaching that physiologically to a learned response, you will not be able to logically make the choice to do what makes sense.
Yeah.
That is tragic, my friend, because you don't think, and you watch that, you could see grown men with golf clubs hitting golf balls right behind her. You don't think if she wouldn't have screamed, yelled, or poked him in the eye, they wouldn't have come and wrapped those golf clubs around that guy's head? Mm-hmm. Would have saved her life, right? She did not have to die. And all the kids and the women that are abused, okay, they don't have to die. Now, here's the other point. And we work a lot, or we have worked a lot with young ladies and young boys who are being prostituted. And what they'll say many times is, hey, if I did that to my daddy, if I did that to my pimp, he'd kill me. And so I don't preach at them. We don't try to tell them and try to lecture them because that's what they expect. But I'll ask them a question and say, Why would you let somebody do that to you if you can leave?
If you've been, sorry, say the last part. If you've been what?
Why would you let somebody do that to you if you can leave?
Oh, yeah.
So in the case of the abused mother, the abused wife, you can make the choice to get away from that person, but you have to get away from them. You can't poke them in the eye and then stand there and ask forgiveness.
Yeah.
You have to make a choice to deal with the reality of the situation, and that is difficult, and there's no easy way. Again, the social ramifications after the incident are huge.
Yeah.
But the question I would say to you, or the statement I would say to you is, nobody has the right to abuse you. You don't have to live in fear, and if someone is hurting you, they're not good for you. Get away from them and get help.
Yeah, exactly. 100%, man. And John, let's definitely bring you back again. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I enjoy your passion. And let's field some questions from viewers. So viewers, leave your questions, etc. And John, we can bring you back, talk more about anything. I mean, dude, my platform is always a place for you. Like, thank you for
Appreciate
sharing.
it.
Like, I really thank you so much for sharing this stuff.
It's my pleasure, and I would love to come see you guys again sometime.
Yeah, totally. So for viewers, I will put all the links and everything so you guys can follow along. You know, we talked about a lot of topics, so I will have like different links to the book too. The book that John recommended. The links will all be there. So you guys can follow along, do your own research, and please go check out his course. And it's online, so it's perfect right now for everyone staying inside.
Absolutely. And come follow me on Garage Sessions on YouTube, my channel, or if you just do a search for TTF Garage Sessions on Facebook. It's free. There's no obligation. I just want to be able to give you guys a taste of some fun. That's all. Come join us. That's
awesome. Awesome, dude. Well, everyone, this is Fight Commentary Breakdowns. I will stop recording now, but John, we can continue talking after this. So for everyone watching Fight Commentary Breakdowns, share this, man. This is good, real stuff. It's not beyond the ring stuff, just life stuff. So thank you so much, John.
Thank you.